Linda Kramer returned from the VA center just after 4 p.m., the Florida sun still heavy enough to leave her squinting as she pulled into the driveway of her modest but hard-earned beachside condo. Her old Subaru rattled to a stop, its engine giving the familiar post-drive sigh she had grown fond of. It was the same dependable mutter she often joked had more personality than some of the retired guys in her building. The air smelled of sunscreen, ocean spray, grilled shrimp from the Pure Cards down the street, and faint citrus from the neighbor's lemon tree. Everything was normal, peaceful, until she noticed the garage door. It was cracked open by just a few inches, not enough to seem deliberate, but enough to ignite her veteran instincts. A garage door should be either up or down. Anything in between screamed that someone had tampered with it or had forgotten to secure it, both unacceptable outcomes in her world. She hit the remote and the door lifted with a groan. What she saw made her jaw clamp so tight the hinge clicked. Boxes, more boxes, stacks on stacks of them, stretching so high they nearly scraped the garage's bare bulb lighting fixture. Some were sealed with neon orange labels reading Thompson's Treasure Trove, her son Greg's ridiculous brand name. Others overflowed with tangled cords, dented laptops, unidentifiable gadgets, mismatched sneakers, and, of all things, 3 ceramic flamingos with chipped beaks. Linda felt her blood pressure spike so sharply she had to steady herself against the wall. Her garage, her sanctuary for tools, gardening supplies, and emergency prep kits had been hijacked. She took a slow breath, composing herself with the same discipline that had gotten her through war-zone-level ER nights and understaffed trauma units during her 40 years as a nurse. She stepped around the boxes, poking labels, lifting lids. Every corner had been colonized. This wasn't a few items. This was an invasion, a full-blown occupational takeover of her property by the same man whose diaper changes she could still recall with perfect accuracy. She pulled out her phone and dialed him. He didn't answer. She called again. Still nothing. Anger wrapped around her chest like a tightening belt. "Oh, you're gonna answer this phone today, son," she muttered, stabbing the call button a 3rd time. On the 4th ring, he picked up. "Hey, Ma, what's up?" She didn't bother hiding her fury. "Gregory Allen Kramer. Why is my garage filled like a Black Friday storage room?" Silence. Then the faint sound of him inhaling. "Okay, before you freak out. Before! Her voice hit a pitch normally reserved for patients trying to remove their IVs. "Greg, my garage is full of your junk." She heard him shuffle. "It's not junk, Ma. It's inventory, side hustle stuff, temporary." "Temporary is a shoebox, not a hoarder's paradise." They went back and forth until she laid down the law. "You have 48 hours to clear it out, or I will." And when Linda Kramer made a promise, the entire state of Florida understood she meant it. Linda spent the rest of the afternoon pacing her living room, replaying the garage scene like a military drill gone wrong. She brewed chamomile tea she didn't drink. She raised her blinds only to shut them again. The ocean's glittering calm outside felt like a mockery of her internal storm. She wanted to believe Greg's intentions weren't malicious, just careless. But carelessness still had consequences. And in this case, consequences were piled to her ceiling. When Greg finally arrived that evening, he walked into the condo wearing a sheepish grin and a sweat-stained baseball cap he kept adjusting like a nervous tick. He was tall like his father, broad-shouldered, with sandy blonde hair that perpetually needed trimming. At 40, he was still trying to convince the world and himself that he hadn't lost control of his own trajectory. "Ma," he said carefully, "I know how it looks. It looks like trespassing." "I didn't trespass. I have a key," which is starting to feel like a mistake. He winced. "Okay, that's fair, but hear me out." He launched into a passionate but chaotic explanation about market trends, flipping electronics, a sudden spike in demand for vintage speakers, and a big opportunity he didn't want to miss. He talked fast, as though speed could disguise the insecurity beneath his words. Linda listened, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Why didn't you ask me?" she finally said when he paused for breath. Greg sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Because you would have said no." "You're damn right I would have said no. This is my home, Greg. My space. I earned it box by box, shift by shift, night after night." Something flickered in his eyes. Shame, maybe even guilt. But then he snapped. "You always do this. You always make me feel like I can't do anything right." That hit her harder than he knew. She felt tears threaten, but she swallowed them down. "I don't think you're a failure," she said quietly. "I think you don't respect boundaries." "Boundaries? I'm your son." "Being my son doesn't give you the right to invade my life whenever you want." He threw up his hands and walked out, the front door slamming behind him. Linda stood frozen. The condo felt abruptly too quiet, like the stillness after a storm, but without the relief. For the first time in a long time, she wondered if the problem wasn't the boxes, but everything the boxes represented. The next morning, Linda rose early, determined to clear her head with the walk along the shoreline. But as she passed the garage on her way to the street, she heard voices, young voices, echoing inside. Her heart lurched. She rushed forward, flung the garage fully open, and found two teenage boys rummaging through Greg's boxes like raccoons at a campsite. "Excuse me," she barked. Both boys jumped. One nearly dropped the blender he was holding. "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" Sorry, ma'am," one stammered. "We bought something from Greg online. He told us to pick it up from his storage." "His storage?" she repeated, outraged. "This is my home, not his business depot." The boys stuttered apologies and fled. Linda stood there trembling with fury, clutching the doorframe as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the ground. Storage. He had called her garage storage. That wasn't just disrespect. That was entitlement. That was assumption. That was exactly what she had spent his entire childhood trying to correct, and he had still learned nothing. She dialed him. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Ma." 24 hours. You now have 24 hours to get every last item out of here before I donate it all. "Ma, wait." "No. I've been patient. You had no right to send strangers to my home. You crossed a line, Greg." A big one. She hung up. She stared at the piled boxes for a long time before she finally shut the garage door. Something in her heart had hardened. This was no longer about clutter. This was about dignity. Greg didn't show up that day, and he didn't call either. Linda pretended this didn't bother her, but the knot in her stomach said otherwise. She tried to distract herself by reorganizing her kitchen drawers and watering her balcony plants. Yet she kept drifting back to the garage, glaring at the closed door as though it might apologize on her son's behalf. By late afternoon, her frustration simmered into something heavier. Sadness mixed with a pinch of fear. Not fear of danger, but fear of what their relationship was becoming. She remembered the little boy who used to bring her dandelions from the park, who would climb into her lap after nightmares, who believed she could fix anything. Now he was a man who avoided her calls when confronted with accountability. That evening, she sat on her couch with her feet tucked under a thin knitted blanket, flipping through old photo albums. There was Greg at 10, holding a fishing pole taller than himself. There he was at 17, grinning beside his beat-up first car. And there he was at 22, graduating from community college, smiling with the optimism of someone who believed adulthood would unfold easily for him. Linda sighed. She feared she had encouraged that optimism too much, shielded him too often, softened too many consequences. She had done it out of love, but love without boundaries could cripple someone, not help them. When her phone finally buzzed, she almost didn't answer. But she did. "Ma," Greg mumbled. His voice sounded tired, maybe even guilty. "I'm heading over tomorrow morning. I'll clean everything." "Tomorrow morning," she repeated. "Not afternoon, not evening. Morning." "I know. And no strangers picking things up from my home." "I know." He hesitated. "Ma, I didn't mean to make you feel disrespected." Her chest softened, but she stayed firm. "You didn't just make me feel it, Greg. You did it." He didn't argue. That was the first good sign she'd seen in days. Greg didn't come the next morning. An hour passed, then two. By noon, Linda's frustration was reaching critical levels. She was about to call him when her phone rang. It was her husband, Mark. His voice was slower these days because of the stroke, but still sharp where it mattered. "Linda," he said. "Need Greg." "Need Greg? For what?" "Fish trip." It took a moment to realize what he meant. Of course, the one thing that always broke tension between father and son, fishing. She knew better than to question Mark's timing. He had an uncanny sense for knowing when their son needed grounding and when she needed space. "I'll tell him." "No." Managed. "Already told him. He said yes." Linda blinked. Greg said yes to something involving accountability? That was new. A few hours later, Greg was helping Mark ease into the passenger seat of his pickup truck, carefully folding Mark's cane and sliding it beside the seat. They drove to Clearwater Pass, where the water shimmered like a sheet of blue glass. Their aluminum boat, old but lovingly maintained, waited at the dock. They pushed off into open water, the boat's small engine humming beneath them. For a while, neither spoke. Fishing demanded patience, silence, presence, all things Greg had been running from lately. When Mark finally broke the quiet, his voice was gravelly but intentional. "You hurting her." Greg stiffened. "Dad, I didn't mean—" "Not mean, but did." Greg exhaled, long and shaky. "I know." Mark baited his hook with the slow precision of someone forced to relearn motor skills the hard way. "Your mom, strong, but not stone." Greg swallowed hard. "I just wanted a chance at something that didn't make me feel like a screw-up. Respect first. Then opportunity." It wasn't eloquent, but it hit harder than any lecture could. They fished until the sun began melting into orange streaks over the horizon. Greg felt a shift inside him, a quiet, humbling clarity. Before they docked, he made a promise. "Dad, I'm going to fix it. All of it." And this time, he meant it. Greg showed up bright and early the following morning, surprising Linda so much she froze with her coffee halfway to her lips. He was sweaty, messy-haired, and armed with moving gloves and a rented trailer. Without waiting for instructions, he lifted the first box from the garage. "Morning, Ma," he said, voice steady. "I'm clearing it all today, every last thing." She wanted to tell him she appreciated it. She wanted to hug him, but years of hurt feelings and unspoken disappointment made her cautious. "Good," she said simply. They worked side by side, dismantling mountains of clutter. Greg sorted items into piles, things to sell, things to donate, things that were so useless not even the landfill deserved them. As he opened boxes, he laughed at himself. Why did I buy 27 remote controls? Because you have the impulse control of a toddler in a candy store, she said. He snorted. Fair. A few hours in, he paused at a dusty cardboard box marked fragile. He opened it slowly and froze. Inside were family photos Linda thought she had lost years ago. Pictures from their first home. Pictures of baby Greg sleeping on Mark's chest. Pictures of Linda in her nurse's scrubs, smiling despite exhaustion. Ma, he whispered. She turned. When she saw the photos, her breath caught. Where did you get those? The attic, last year. I forgot they were here. He held up one photo, 8-year-old Greg beaming with missing teeth while holding a rubber sea turtle. Linda laughed, a soft, emotional sound that lifted years off her shoulders. Greg's face softened with relief. I'm sorry, Ma, he said again, quieter. Really sorry. This time, she believed him, and she let herself smile at him, not the guarded smile she'd used lately, but a real one. Finish clearing the garage, she said gently. Then we'll talk. And for the first time in a long time, she felt hope blooming where anger had been. That late afternoon, the garage was finally empty, swept clean, and restored to the pristine, orderly state Linda had always maintained with pride. The floor gleamed, the tool bench breathed freely again, and Linda's emergency supplies, water jugs, batteries, and hurricane kits sat neatly in their rightful places. The sense of control she regained was more than practical, it was emotional. For the first time in months, she felt her home was truly hers again. Greg leaned against the wall, sweaty, sore, but proud of the work he had done. He watched his mother silently as she inspected the garage, her eyes scanning every corner like a drill sergeant evaluating recruits. After a long moment, she turned to him. You did good today, she said. It was simple, but he felt the weight of it. Praise from Linda Kramer wasn't handed out like candy. It was earned. Ma, he said, rubbing the back of his neck, I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About everything. About you. About how I've been acting. She folded her arms, not defensively, but expectantly. Go on. I've been irresponsible. I've been taking advantage of you without even realizing it. But the truth is, I've been afraid. She blinked. That was not what she expected. Afraid of what? Afraid of failing. Afraid of trying something real and messing it up. It's stupid, I know, but using your garage, avoiding confronting you, it was easier than owning my life. His voice cracked slightly. I didn't just take your space. I took your trust. Linda's heart twisted. For years, she had wanted him to articulate exactly what he was saying now, but she never pushed because she knew forcing vulnerability was as useless as forcing a wave to stand still. Greg, she said softly, you're my son. I make it angry, I make it tired, but I've never stopped believing you could do better. He looked down at his shoes. Then why does it feel like I've disappointed you more times than I've made you proud? She replied, because you focus more on your failures than your successes, and because you forget that even adults need boundaries to grow. You've been floating for too long. It's time you planted yourself. He nodded slowly. I want to. I really do. She stepped forward and put a hand on his shoulder. Then start today. And right there, amidst the smell of dust and sunlight warming the concrete, Greg made a silent vow to grow up. That evening, after a well-earned shower and a quick dinner, they sat together on the condo's balcony, watching the sun slip into the Gulf of Mexico. The sky glowed with streaks of amber, coral, and violet, a watercolor masterpiece that always made Linda grateful she chose to retire near the water. Greg was unusually quiet, his mind churning. Finally, he said, Ma, I want to do something for you, for the community, something that actually means something. She raised a brow. Oh? Should I brace myself? He chuckled. No, hear me out. You know that empty patch of land by the condo entrance? The one everyone complains about but no one does anything with? The dead grass triangle with the sad palm tree? Yeah, that one. He leaned forward, excitement flickering. What if we turned it into a community garden? She blinked. That idea had lived in her mind for years, but she never imagined Greg would think of it on his own. A garden? For the residents, for veterans, especially the older ones who need something to care for, something grounding. She studied him carefully. You really want to commit to something like that? More than anything, he said firmly. I can organize volunteers, handle supplies, manage schedules. You can oversee the gardening side. You're good at that. Better than good, actually. She felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the humid evening air. It won't be easy, she warned. Nothing worth doing ever is, he said. And for the first time, she believed he wasn't just saying it. He meant it. The next day, they pitched the idea to the condo board. Linda laid out the mental health benefits for veterans, the environmental benefits, the aesthetic improvements, and the community building elements. Greg spoke clearly, confidently, like a man finally finding his place. The board members were surprised, even some impressed. Even Harold Bloom, the grumpy retired lawyer who hated everything from noise to children to lawn flamingos, begrudgingly admitted the proposal was structured and realistic. By unanimous vote, the garden was approved. Linda squeezed Greg's hand under the table. For the first time in a long time, she felt hope radiate from him instead of excuses. The transformation began immediately. Greg recruited volunteers from the condo, from the VA center, from the local senior program. Anyone who could dig, water, lift, plant, or even just supervise with a folding chair and iced tea. Linda designed the layout. Raised beds for herbs and vegetables, a row of tomatoes, a sunflower corner, a butterfly patch, and a small memorial section for veterans lost in service. Greg handled the grunt work. Hauling wheelbarrows of soil, assembling wood frames, fixing irrigation lines, and negotiating bulk seed purchases from a gardening supply store. The first day they broke ground, Mark sat nearby in his wheelchair, watching proudly as his wife and son worked in harmony like they hadn't in years. Neighbors gathered, curious. Some joined in, some just cheered. Children helped sprinkle seeds with messy enthusiasm. Veterans who rarely left their units came down to smell the soil, some tearing up at the unexpected rush of memories it triggered. The garden grew quickly. Within weeks, sprouts appeared. Basil leaves smelled sweet in the morning air. Tomatoes swelled with promise. Butterflies danced over milkweed. And Linda felt a joy she hadn't felt since her nursing days, a sense of purpose, connection, and legacy. Greg changed too. He became reliable. He woke early, he kept schedules. He called Linda every day, not to ask for anything, but to update her on progress. He carried himself differently, with pride instead of shame. The garden didn't just root itself into the earth, it rooted itself into their relationship. One evening, as they watered the beds under string lights Greg had hung earlier, he said quietly, "Ma, thank you for pushing me, even when I didn't want to be pushed." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "I wasn't pushing you, I was trying to guide you." "Well," he said with a small smile, "I'm finally listening." Martha hadn't planned on confronting Jake again until she'd slept, prayed, and maybe swallowed 2 more ibuprofen. But life didn't often give her the courtesy of choosing the timing. When she stepped out of the elevator into the dimly lit garage level, carrying 2 grocery bags with frozen vegetables and a rotisserie chicken, she found her condo neighbor, Joaquin Alvarez, standing by the storage cages with a look of deep concern, the kind that said trouble was already brewing. Joaquin was in his late 60s, a retired postal worker who still wore his old blue windbreaker like he expected to be called back into service any minute. And he pointed toward her garage stall with a grimace that made her stomach sink. "I didn't want to get involved, but he's down there again. Your boy. He's dragging in boxes, Martha. Big ones." A pulse of anger shot through the headache already pounding behind her eyes as she marched down the ramp, heart thudding, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead like a warning. She rounded the corner to her garage stall and saw Jake bent over a dolly strapping down a huge crate labeled Vintage Electronics, High Value. Another crate already sat behind him, cardboard still crisp like it had been delivered this morning. He froze. When he heard her footsteps, his shoulders stiffened before he slowly turned. "Mom," he said, breathless and defensive like a teenager caught sneaking a beer. "I can explain." "Start explaining," she shot back, dropping the grocery bags onto the hood of her car so hard the chicken rattled. "Because I told you, no, I begged you to stop using my garage. And what do? More boxes? Bigger boxes?" Jake glanced toward the exit, as if calculating escape. "It's temporary, Mom, I swear. There's a buyer coming tomorrow and I need a safe place just overnight. I didn't think you'd be home this early. I live here. I can come home whenever I damn well please." He flinched. She rarely swore, but something about the carelessness in his face made her blood boil. "You promised," she said, stepping forward, voice lowering but gaining force. "You promised you'd clear it out. But instead, you're doubling down. You're disrespecting me, my home, my boundaries." He rubbed his forehead. I know, okay, I messed up. But you don't get it. This is the only thing keeping me afloat right now. The app work dried up. The landscaping gig cut hours. Rent's insane. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying." She softened for half a second, but then she saw another label taped to the crate. "Handle with care, verified, off." That's when the dread hit her. "Jake, are you sure this is legal?" His mouth opened, then closed. A beat too long. "I'm flipping items," he said carefully. "It's not illegal." "But is it honest?" she pushed. His jaw tightened. "That's complicated." "I don't do complicated gray area schemes," she said sharply. "Not in my garage." He ran his hand through his hair, agitation rising like heat off the pavement. "Mom, please, just tonight, okay? I already lined up the buyer. If you make me haul this somewhere else right now, I'm screwed. I'll lose the sale." Joaquin approached quietly behind her, clearing his throat like a man stepping into a tornado. "I don't mean to intrude, but the property board will fine her for this, son. They patrol randomly. If they see these crates, they'll assume she's running some business out of her space." Jake rolled his eyes. "I'm not doing anything dangerous." "It's not about danger," Martha snapped. "It's about respect and responsibility." For a moment, he looked so much like the 12-year-old boy who used to build forts in the living room, wide-eyed, defensive, desperate to be understood, that her heart cracked. But she held the line. She had spent 40 years as a nurse learning when to be firm even with people she loved, especially with people she loved. "You have until 10 p.m., she said quietly, with a calmness that bordered on terrifying. "Everything must be gone, all of it, no exceptions." Jake stared at her, stunned. "You're serious?" "I'm done being taken advantage of in my own home." His frustration burst open. "Taken advantage of? I'm your son. I'm trying to build something, Ma. You act like I'm some criminal." "I act like a woman who has boundaries," she replied evenly. "You should try having some." The words hit him like a slap. His face hardened, and he turned away, yanking the dolly upright. "Fine, whatever. I'll figure it out." But as he rolled the crate away, it caught on the lip of the concrete, tilting dangerously. The strap gave out with a crack. The crate toppled sideways, crashing onto the ground and splitting open with a splintering burst that echoed through the garage. Inside weren't vintage electronics. They were dozens of boxed e-bikes, still wrapped in shipping plastic, each bearing a barcode from a warehouse distributor. Joaquin sucked in a sharp breath. Martha's mouth dried. Jake froze pale as the moon. "Jake," she whispered, "what is this?" He swallowed hard, eyes darting as though the walls were closing in. "Mom, please, don't freak out. It's not stolen, okay? It's liquidation stock." "Liquidation stock doesn't come in crates marked verified off with distributor barcodes," she said, her nursing instincts detecting the feverish panic beneath her skin. "You tell me right now, are you mixed up with someone?" His silence was an answer, a terrible one. Joaquin stepped back slowly, like he wanted no part of whatever mess was unraveling. Martha steadied herself against her car.
Jake, what did you do? He ran a shaking hand over his face. I didn't steal anything, I swear. But the guy I'm dealing with, he moves merchandise fast, no questions asked. I get a cut for storing and listing, that's all. And you used my home? She whispered, voice cracking. For this? Her hurt made his eyes soften with guilt. Mom, I didn't want you involved. I thought I could handle it. I'm trying to get out from under it, okay? This shipment wasn't supposed to come here. My storage unit fell through. I panicked. Her mind raced. What if someone dangerous showed up tonight? What if the building got searched? What if I got fined, or worse? You have to get this out, she said. Now. Jake opened his mouth to argue, but the hum of an approaching engine cut him off. A black pickup truck rolled slowly into the garage, headlights sweeping across the concrete pillars before settling on them. The truck idled. The windows were tinted. Too tinted. Marka felt every hair on her arms rise. Jake went white. Mom, go upstairs, he whispered urgently. Now. But she didn't move. Neither did the truck. And the tension hanging in the air was thick enough to choke on.
I can still move it tonight. I just need a few hours. You told me that last time. The man finally looked at Martha, his expression unreadable. And who's this? Jake stiffened. My mom. She has nothing to do with this. Martha stepped forward before fear could stop her. That's right. I don't. And whatever arrangement you two have ends now. Jake hissed, Mom, stop. But she didn't. These boxes are leaving this property tonight, she said, each word crisp, steady, and coated with the authority she'd learned from decades of dealing with intoxicated veterans twice her size. My garage isn't a warehouse. My home isn't a hiding spot. You will remove every crate immediately. The man turned fully toward her, studying her with unsettling calm. Ma'am, he said, voice polite but toneless. With respect, this is between me and your son. Anything happening in my garage is between me and my garage, she snapped, and I'm finished being disrespected. The man didn't blink. Your son owes product movement. If he doesn't deliver tonight, there will be consequences. Something inside Martha, maternal instinct, military spouse grit, nursing triage bravery, surged to the surface. The only consequences tonight will be these crates leaving before building security sees them. Jake grabbed her arm, panicked. Mom, please go upstairs. No, she said, not until this is handled. The man smirked faintly, amused by her resolve. You've got spirit, he said. Reminds me of my mother. Then, unexpectedly, he gestured toward the crates. Fine, we'll move it, but he's riding with me to the drop point. Jake blanched. What? No, That's the deal. You want this out? He comes. Martha stepped between them without thinking. Absolutely not. The man raised his eyebrow. You think you can say no? I know I can, she said, refusing to budge. For the first time, the man's expression shifted, subtle respect mixed with genuine annoyance. Lady, you don't understand how this business works. I understand perfectly, she replied. Anyone demanding my son get into a truck at night to ride along is not someone I trust. Jake's face twisted with dread. Mom, stop, please. But the man ignored him. You have to learn when to step back, or someone gets hurt. Martha didn't flinch. Then you'll need to hurt me first. The man stared at her for 3 long seconds, then laughed, a humorless, dark sound. You're something else, he muttered. Fine. He doesn't ride along. Jake exhaled shakily in relief. But, the man continued, voice sharpening, the product still moves, now. He motioned toward the truck. Load it. Jake scrambled toward the crates, lifting one end of a box too heavy for him, shoulders trembling. Martha rushed forward. Don't you dare help him.
the man warned. "He got himself into this." She spun toward him sharply. "That's my son. I'll help him as much as I damn well please." The man's jaw tightened, but he didn't stop her. Together, Martha and Jake strained to lift the heavy e-bike boxes into the truck bed. Every movement was a painful reminder of how far Jake had drifted and how hard she was now pulling him back. When the final crate was loaded, the man closed the tailgate with a heavy slam. "Consider your garage clean, but the debt isn't settled. I'll be in touch." He climbed into the truck, reversed slowly, then disappeared into the night. The second he was gone, Jake sank onto the concrete floor, face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking, not from tears, but from the silent collapse of adrenaline and shame. Martha kneeled beside him, breath ragged. "What did you get yourself into, son?" He didn't look up. "Something stupid. Something I didn't know how to get out of. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." She rested a trembling hand on his back. "You're going to tell me everything," she said softly. "Tonight." He nodded, defeated. And as they sat together on the cold garage floor, the weight of the night pressing down on both of them, Martha realized this wasn't just about boxes or boundaries anymore. This was about saving her son before the darkness he had stepped into swallowed him whole.
Jake didn't speak for several minutes after they made it back upstairs, and Martha didn't push him. She simply poured 2 glasses of water, set them on the kitchen table, and waited. She had learned long ago that silence could either heal or suffocate. Tonight, it felt like a scalpel cutting open the truth Jake had been running from. Finally, he exhaled shakily and leaned forward, elbows on the table. "It started 6 months ago," he said, voice low and cracked. "I was broke. Behind on rent, behind on everything. One of the guys from my landscaping job told me about this seller who moved liquidation inventory, stuff from overstock warehouses, unclaimed freight, that kind of thing. But he wasn't exactly following protocol." Martha's heart tightened. "Meaning it wasn't legal?" "Meaning it wasn't illegal enough to look dangerous at first," he muttered. "Most of the stock was legit, I swear. But then he started mixing in pallets he got from other distributors, stuff with no paperwork or weird serial numbers. He said it was all overlooked inventory, but I knew that was bull." Martha rubbed her temples. "And you still got involved?" "I thought I could handle it," he whispered. "I thought I could flip enough stock, save enough cash, and get out before things got messy." He laughed bitterly. "But you never get out before things get messy." She reached across the table and took his hand, the mother in her instinctively overriding the frustration. "Who is he? The man tonight. What's his name?" "He calls himself Redford." "Don't think that's his real name." Martha frowned. "Redford?" "They all go by last names or fake ones, keeps things clean. He handles the high-value shipments, the bikes, the drones, the electronics. He doesn't like delays." "Or boundaries," Martha muttered. "No," Jake agreed quietly. "Definitely not." She took a deep breath, steadying the anger rising up through her nerves. "Jake, listen to me very carefully. You're going to end this. Now. Tonight." He scoffed, eyes hollow. "You think I haven't tried? Mom, these guys don't just let people walk away. They're not mobsters, but they're not harmless either. They expect work done. They expect loyalty. They expect consistency. They expect fear," she corrected. "That doesn't mean they get compliance." He shook his head. "You don't understand. If I bail now, they'll come after me. They'll come after anyone connected to me." She stiffened. "Meaning me?" He looked away. "Yeah, that's why I never told you." A loud knock made both of them jump. 3 sharp raps on the door, too forceful for a neighbor, too slow for law enforcement, too intentional for chance. Jake's face drained of color. "No," he whispered. "They wouldn't. Not this fast." Martha rose, spine straightening, adrenaline tightening her chest. "Stay here." Jake stood too fast. "No, Mom, please, don't open it." Another knock, harder,
rattling the frame. Martha's instincts kicked in. She didn't approach the peephole. Instead, she stepped to the side of the door, keeping herself out of direct view. "Who is it?" she called out firmly. Silence. Then a man's voice, not Redford's, calm, smooth, and too polite. "Ma'am, this is building security. We need to speak with you regarding some activity in the garage." Jake swore under his breath. "It's not security," he hissed. "Security always identifies by name and unit." Martha didn't answer the door. "Which officer? State your name." A pause. A long one. Then, "Just open the door, ma'am." Jake grabbed her arm. "Mom, do not open that door." The handle jiggled, hard. Martha backed away, heart pounding. "The police," she whispered. "We need to call the police." But Jake shook his head violently. "If we call the cops now, Redford will assume I flipped. He'll panic. Panicked men don't think, they retaliate." The banging grew louder, more violent, more determined. "Open the door." The voice was no longer pretending. Martha grabbed her phone with shaking hands. "Jake, we don't have a choice." But before she could dial, the hallway outside filled with shouting. Real shouting. Multiple voices. A door somewhere slammed open. A woman screamed. Heavy footsteps thundered down the corridor like a stampede. Jake and Martha froze. "What now?" she whispered, pulse racing. Then came a deep, commanding voice, one that cut through the chaos like a blade. "Police, everyone stay inside your units." Jake's jaw dropped. "Real cops?" "Real cops," Martha breathed. More shouting followed. Then the unmistakable click of weapons being raised, the bark of orders echoing through the hallway. "Hands where we can see them. Get down. On the ground. Now." Martha's heart slammed against her ribs. Jake pressed his back to the wall, breathing fast and shallow. Oh God, Mom, they're here for Redford. They're here for the whole operation." Martha held her breath as a series of loud thuds vibrated through the building, someone being tackled or shoved against a wall. A moment later, the hallway went eerily quiet. No knocking, no shouting, just heavy breathing and muted radio chatter. And then a knock. A normal one. Calm, professional. "Mrs. Lincoln? This is Officer Malloway with the Clearwater Police Department. You're safe to open the door now." Martha and Jake exchanged a long, trembling look. Whatever was happening outside that door, it was only the beginning.
Martha opened the door slowly, cautiously, her hand trembling just enough that she hoped the officer wouldn't notice. But Officer Malloy noticed everything. He was tall, mid-40s, with a clean uniform and the kind of expression that suggested he'd seen so much chaos in his career that nothing surprised him anymore. Two other officers stood behind him in the hallway, one glancing down both sides of the corridor, the other jotting notes while an elderly woman down the hall peeked from her doorway with rollers still in her hair. "Ma'am," Malloy said gently, "we responded to a disturbance on this floor involving individuals attempting unauthorized entry. We believe one of them was connected to a larger investigation we've been pursuing regarding illicit shipments moving through residential properties." Jake stiffened beside her, muscles locking like steel cables. Martha shot him a warning glance. "Don't speak. Not yet." Malloy's eyes flicked to Jake anyway. "You two all right? Anyone try to force their way inside?" Martha swallowed hard. The truth formed in her throat and stuck there like a thorn. If she told him Redford's men had been at her door, Jake could be pulled into something he wasn't prepared for. If she lied, she risked the situation spiraling even further. Someone knocked. They claimed to be security, but they didn't identify themselves properly, so he didn't open. Malloy nodded. "Good." That was smart. He glanced at his notes. "We have a suspect detained on the first floor who was posing as security to gain access to residents' units. No injuries reported so far." Martha felt Jake's hand twitch at his side. Guilt or fear, she couldn't tell which. "We'd like to ask a few questions," Malloy continued, stepping inside with a polite but firm authority.
Just routine. Anything you say here helps us determine if there's a larger threat in the building. Jake's breath caught. Martha squeezed his wrist behind her back, a signal from years of parenting. Stay calm, let me lead. Of course, officer, she said, motioning him in. Malloy entered, scanning the condo like a man trained to notice what didn't belong. Boxes, tools, suspicious items. Martha thanked heaven that the crates were gone. Has there been any unusual activity around your unit recently? He asked. Jake's throat clicked as he swallowed, but Martha answered smoothly. The garage has been active. Deliveries, people coming and going. Hard to tell what's unusual these days. Malloy hummed thoughtfully. We've traced several unregistered shipments to this building. Someone here may be storing or moving merchandise illegally. Jake went rigid. Malloy noticed. Sir, you seem tense. Everything all right? Jake forced a nod. Yeah, just long night. Malloy didn't press, but his eyes sharpened. Have either of you seen any large boxes, crates, or suspicious packages around the property? Another moment where the truth tried clawing its way up Martha's throat. She could feel Jake silently begging her not to say anything. She chose her words like stepping stones across a minefield. There are always boxes in the garage. Beach gear, furniture, people moving in and out. Nothing that stood out. Malloy studied her carefully, as if weighing her credibility. For a terrifying second, she thought he'd call her bluff. But then his radio crackled. Malloy, suspect is requesting medical, claims he's having chest pressure. Malloy sighed. Copy, on my way. He turned back to them. If anything unusual happens again tonight, call us. We'll have officers rotating through the area until things settle down. Martha nodded. Thank you, officer. Stay safe, he said, and then the officers were gone. The door clicked shut. Silence dropped over the condo like a heavy blanket. Jake exhaled loudly. Mom, thank you. I thought you were going to tell him everything. I wanted to, but I saw your face. That was enough. Jake paced the small living room, running his hands through his hair. This is getting worse. I keep dragging you into it. Now cops, fake security, Redford shipment. I don't know what to do. Martha followed him with her eyes, calm but firm. You're going to stop running. You're going to face this. He spun around. Face what? Redford? The cops? Both could ruin me. Both could ruin you. You're my son. You don't ruin me by needing help. He sat on the couch burying his face in his hands. I'm scared, Mom. It was the most honest thing he'd said in months. She sat beside him. Fear means you're aware of the danger. It doesn't mean you're defeated. Then the condo lights flickered. Once, twice, then went dark. Total blackout. Jake froze. Mom, she whispered. Stay calm, though her own heart was hammering. The hallway outside erupted in shouts. Residents calling out, someone yelling for a flashlight, the distant beep of emergency generators trying to kick in but failing. Then came a sound she recognized too well from years in emergency settings. The thump, thump of boots running. Not police, too quiet, too fast. Not panicked residents, too coordinated. Jake moved to the window, peeking through the blinds. Mom, multiple guys just ran behind the pool deck. I think they came from the side entrance. Her stomach twisted. Is it police? No, he whispered, voice trembling. It's them. Martha's breath caught. Redford's people? Yeah. He swallowed hard. They're back, and they're not pretending this time. Marlene barely slept after the tense meeting with Detective Klein. The knowledge that someone had been watching her condo, tapping into her garage feed, and following her movements gnawed at her more deeply than age or exhaustion ever could. She rose before dawn, brewed coffee with trembling hands, and sat at her kitchen counter replaying Jason's brief, worried voice message from the previous night. He had said he was fine, that he just needed space to think, but the tone underneath, strained, hollow, told her that something had shifted, something he hadn't wanted to admit. Determined to see him face to face, she locked the condo, pulled on her windbreaker, and headed to his apartment across town. The morning air was calm, but she felt a tension beneath it, like the uneasy stillness before a hurricane. When she arrived at Jason's building, she expected his car in its usual cracked parking spot. Instead,
The space was empty, oil stains untouched. A chill passed through her. She buzzed his apartment repeatedly, no answer. A neighbor stepped out, a young mother with a stroller, who recognized Marlene from previous visits and hesitantly said that she had seen Jason leave in a hurry around 5 a.m., looking off and carrying a duffel bag like he was running from something. Marlene thanked her, heart pounding, and drove straight to the marina where Jason sometimes sat to calm his nerves. When she pulled into the lot, she stopped breathing. Jason's truck was there, but he was nowhere in sight. His fishing pole leaned against the passenger door like it had been dropped mid-action. She opened the door. The inside was a mess. Paper scattered, glove box open, and his phone lying face down on the passenger seat, screen cracked. Jason never left his phone behind. Never. She unlocked it using the fingerprint he had registered years ago for emergencies. The moment it lit up, notifications flooded in, missed calls, unknown numbers, and a text thread with someone saved only as R. The last message from R read, "You shouldn't have opened the unit. We warned you. Meet us where it started." Marlene's breath hitched. She scrolled further up. Jason had replied earlier in the night, "I didn't take anything. I just want this to end." Another message from R, "It won't end. Not until we get it back." Her hand shook violently as she tried to decipher what it meant, what her son had stumbled into, and how deep the threat ran. Before she could think further, a voice behind her said, "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." She spun around to find a tall man wearing sunglasses and plain clothes, but with a posture too rigid to be casual. Another man flanked him. Marlene's instincts sharpened. She had worked with federal agents during her nursing years, treating vets, and these men had that same cold, trained stillness. "Who are you?" she demanded, stepping in front of Jason's door protectively. The first man showed a badge too quickly for her to read. "We're investigating your son's involvement with stolen federal property. Where is he?" She steeled her voice. "If you're real agents, you should already know I don't answer questions without seeing credentials clearly." The second man's jaw twitched. The first reached inside his jacket, but not for identification. He aimed for her wrist, trying to take Jason's phone. Marlene reacted faster than she thought her 70-year-old body could move, stepping back and clutching the phone tight. "Don't make this difficult," the man hissed. "You're interfering with the federal—" But before he could finish, tires screeched across the marina entrance. A county sheriff cruiser skidded to a halt and a familiar voice barked from inside. "Back away from her, now!" It was Detective Klein. The two men stiffened. "Sheriff's office has no jurisdiction over this investigation," the first man said sharply. Klein exited the cruiser with deliberate calm. "Funny thing is," he said, hand on his belt, "I just called the bureau myself. No one there knows anything about federal agents being assigned to this case." The men exchanged a look, too long, too tense, and then turned without another word, walking briskly to a nondescript black sedan. As they drove off, Klein muttered, "Fake badges, but professionals, though." Marlene leaned against Jason's truck, her chest tight. "They're after my son. They think he took something." Klein nodded grimly. "And they're willing to pretend to be feds to get it back, which means whatever was in that storage unit isn't just valuable, it's dangerous." Marlene held up Jason's phone. "He left this behind, and he's gone." "Then he's running from something he thinks will hurt you. Or he's been taken." The words struck her like a physical blow. "We need to find him," she said, voice breaking but determined. "We will," Klein replied, already scanning the surroundings. "But there's something you need to know first. I had my tech guy analyze the garage footage. The person watching your condo, he wasn't acting alone. There were at least 3 people, rotating surveillance shifts. They're organized." "Organized into what?" she asked. Klein looked at her, with a heavy, reluctant truth in his eyes. "A domestic smuggling crew. And your son may have crossed paths with them." Marlene's pulse hammered. "By accident? Maybe, or maybe," Klein said carefully. "He found something he wasn't supposed to when he started selling those side hustle items." Marlene felt everything inside her tighten. "Then we find out what he found," Klein nodded, "and we start by opening that storage unit again, this time with backup." Marlene looked at the horizon, where the sun reflected off the water in sharp, blinding streaks. Somewhere out there, Jason was alone, scared, or worse. And whatever game he had stumbled into wasn't just about a storage unit anymore. It was war, and she was going to fight it. Klein drove behind Marlene as they left the marina, both heading toward the storage facility on the edge of town, a sun-faded compound surrounded by chain-link fencing and topped with dying barbed wire that rattled whenever the ocean breeze shifted. The closer they got, the more Marlene felt a tightening pressure at the base of her skull, a dense intuition telling her that whatever they were about to find would not just reveal what Jason had stumbled into,
It would explain why men were watching her home, why fake federal agents had confronted her at the marina, and why her son had vanished before sunrise. When they pulled into the cracked asphalt lot, she saw something that stopped her breath. The lock on Unit 113, the unit Jason had first opened, was gone, the metal clasp hanging bent, as if ripped off with bolt cutters. Klein immediately stepped in front of her, hand hovering over his holster. "Stay behind me," he said, voice low, eyes sweeping the lot. They approached the unit slowly, each footstep crunching gravel so loudly it felt intrusive. When Klein eased the door up with one hand, Marlene braced herself for anything: a body, stolen goods, weapons. But what greeted them was stranger, more unsettling. The entire unit was empty. Cleared out. Not a single box. Not a scrap of cardboard. Not even dust on the concrete floor, as if someone had cleaned it meticulously. Klein crouched, touched the floor and grimaced. "Bleach," he muttered. "They sanitized it." Marlene stepped past him, her heart sinking. Why? What was here? Klein shook his head. Something big. Something they didn't want anyone to know existed. Marlene moved further inside, examining the walls, the corners, every trace of what might have been stored here. She spotted faint drag marks on the floor, thin, parallel, the kind made by a heavy crate or metal case being pulled out by two people. Whatever was here wasn't small, she said, and they moved it fast. As she stood, her hand brushed something cold, tucked behind the metal rail near the ceiling. She reached up and pulled it down. A tiny black device, no bigger than her thumb. A tracker. Klein's eyes widened. They planted this here? To know when someone came? Marlene held it carefully, rage building in her chest. They were watching my son before he even knew what he was stepping into. Klein took photos, bagged the device, and stepped outside to call his tech team. As he spoke in hushed tones, Marlene wandered to the back of a unit, replaying every memory of Jason over the last month. The stress in his voice, the sudden anxiety, the late-night drives, the duffel bags he kept zipped, the time she found him scribbing the garage floor for no reason. Something he had been hiding wasn't just guilt or embarrassment. It was fear. When Klein returned, his face had hardened. My tech guy ran preliminary info on the device model. This isn't cheap surveillance gear. This is the type used by private military contractors. Marlene felt a cold ripple run through her. Private? As in not government? Private as in mercenary groups, unregulated outfits, black market retrieval teams. Feds don't use these. Professionals outside the law do. Her stomach twisted. What were they after? Klein motioned toward the office. We're going to find out. The facility keeps internal access logs separate from customer logs. If someone cut their way in, they might have tripped a silent backup sensor they didn't know existed. They walked into the storage office, a cramped, wood-paneled room with a bored-looking clerk who perked up when he saw Klein's badge. After a brief exchange, the clerk handed over a printed log with timestamps from the last 48 hours. Klein scanned it, then suddenly stopped. There. He tapped an entry. 3:41 a.m. Unauthorized internal movement in aisle C. Door activation from inside the facility. Marlene leaned in, reading the details. From inside? Meaning someone was already here when the system tried to log them leaving. Probably used the bypass method to get in unnoticed. Marlene frowned. Then, how did the system catch them leaving? Klein exhaled slowly. Because this place is old. They replaced the outside locks, but never updated the internal pressure sensors. Moving something heavy triggered it. He pulled up the next page and Marlene's chest tightened again. The log listed camera snapshots, automatically captured when motion was detected near the exit corridor. The images were grainy, black and white, silhouettes. But in the second frame, Marlene saw something her mind refused to accept. A figure, hauling a metal case. The shape, the height, the posture, Every fraction of it belonged to one person. Jason. Her breath broke. That's him. My boy. That's him. Klein swallowed. He's not alone. Look at the second figure. Another silhouette. Larger, broader, wearing what appeared to be tactical clothing. The man's hand was gripping Jason's arm as if steering him or controlling him. Dear God. They took him. Klein's jaw tightened. No. He's walking. Not being dragged. That means he went with them under pressure or a threat. Or he made a deal, Marlene whispered, dread filling her. Klein didn't deny it. If they think he took something, they might have forced him to retrieve it. Marlene felt something shift inside her. Not fear, but resolve solidifying like steel. Then we find out what was in that crate. We will. But first, we track that silhouette. I'll have my team enhance the footage. At least now we know Jason is alive. For now, she whispered, clutching the image printout as if it were his heartbeat. And I swear, I'm going to bring him home. Klein nodded. Then buckle up, Marlene, because from this point forward, we're not dealing with thieves or hustlers. He looked toward the empty unit. We're dealing with a covert crew that thinks your son stole from them. And they don't let anyone walk away. Marlene stared at the dark doorway of Unit 113, feeling the full weight of the battle ahead. Then they picked the wrong mother to cross.
Marlene sat in Klein's cruiser as they left the storage facility. The grainy printout of Jason being led out by the unknown man clenched so tightly in her fist that the paper had softened from sweat. Every instinct she'd honed over decades of nursing veterans through trauma screamed that Jason was in survival mode, cooperative on the surface, terrified underneath, trying to stay alive long enough to find a way out. Klein drove with a focus that bordered on obsession as he called in favors, requesting digital enhancement of the silhouettes, cross-referencing local tactical gear purchases, and running facial matches through unlisted databases. The sun was climbing higher now, glaring off the windshield, turning the day too bright for the darkness eating at Marlene. We need to check his apartment again, she said. There has to be something we missed. Klein nodded. Agreed. If he knew someone was after him, he might have hidden something he didn't want me or them to find. When they reached Jason's building, Marlene's pulse quickened. Two maintenance workers stood near his door, talking quietly while a new lock hung on the doorframe. We had a break-in early this morning, one worker explained. Someone forced the latch. Management told us to replace it. Marlene shot Klein a sharp look. Someone had been here, searching for something, or destroying something Jason left behind. Klein flashed his badge, and the workers quickly unlocked the door for them before leaving the hallway. The moment they stepped inside, Marlene felt her stomach lurch. The apartment was ransacked, but not the way thieves behaved. Nothing valuable was taken. TV untouched, laptop still on the counter, wallet sitting openly on the table. Instead, the drawers were emptied, couch cushions ripped open, closet containers dumped on the floor. They weren't stealing. They were hunting. This wasn't amateurs, Klein said, scanning the chaos. They were looking for a specific object. Marlene walked deeper into the apartment, her heart pounding as she tried to imagine Jason watching strangers tear through his belongings or scrambling to hide something before they arrived. She stopped in the bedroom. The mattress had been slashed and peeled back, but something stood out. The floorboard near his dresser sat slightly crooked. She knelt, pried it up with her fingers, and revealed a narrow cavity beneath it. Inside lay a single item, a small metallic USB drive wrapped in black electrical tape. Her breath caught. "Klein?" she whispered. "They didn't get this." Klein rushed over and stared at it like it was radioactive. "Don't touch it," he said, though she already had it in her palm. That could contain exactly what they think he stole. Marlene slowly unwrapped the tape, revealing a drive etched with an unfamiliar symbol, a circle intersected by 3 angled lines, like a crude compass. Klein's face paled. "I've seen that symbol before." "Where?" "On case file seals from a group we've been tracking unofficially, an underground logistics network masquerading as a private security contracting firm.
They move goods that don't exist, if you know what I mean. Marlene tightened her grip on the drive. What would Jason be doing with something like this? Klein stared at the drive as if studying a bomb. Either he took it without knowing what it was, or someone hid it among those items in his garage and he stumbled onto it. Marlene's pulse hammered. So whatever was in that crate at the storage unit was connected to this, Klein finished. This isn't about stolen goods anymore. It's about classified data, or illegally obtained intel. The kind people kill to retrieve. Marlene swallowed hard. Then we need to see what's on it. Klein shook his head, gripping her wrist. No. If it's encrypted with that symbol, plugging it into any network device triggers a beacon. It will alert them instantly. Then how do we read it? We don't, but I know someone who can. Before Marlene could ask, Jason's phone, still in her pocket, vibrated with a new text from an unknown number. She froze, dread climbing her spine. Klein snatched the phone from her and read the message aloud. If you want him alive, bring what he took. Today, 5 p.m., Pier 27. Marlene felt her knees weaken. They have him. They're trying to trade. Klein's eyes narrowed. They don't know you have the real item. They're fishing. This is bait. Another text arrived instantly. Come alone. Then another, a photo attachment. Klein opened it and Marlene gasped. Jason, hands bound behind him, kneeling on a concrete floor, head lowered, a bruise blooming across his cheek. A gloved hand gripped his shoulder. Her heart shattered and hardened in the same moment. They hurt him, she whispered. They're going to kill him if we don't bring this. Klein put a steady hand on her arm. We'll go, but you're not going alone, and you're not handing over the real drive. Marlene looked at him, eyes burning. You want to give them a fake? A decoy, Klein clarified. Long enough to locate Jason and extract him. You think they'll let him walk away? Klein's expression was grim, not willingly. Marlene stared at the photo again. Jason wasn't just scared, he was defeated. His shoulders slumped in a way she had never seen before, like he believed this was the end. Something inside her snapped. Then we make them let him go. She said cold, controlled, lethal. Klein noted. We'll prepare on the way. But once we step on that pier, everything changes. Marlene pocketed the drive, straightened her spine, and turned toward the door. They want a war? She said quietly. Then let's show them what a mother will do for her son.
This, Athena whispered, is national-level material. If someone stole this, the group hunting Jason is not just private. They are subcontractors operating in the shadows of federal logistics. They must have embedded themselves into the system to extract classified intel for profit. And your son, she exhaled, he probably opened a crate he wasn't supposed to and found this inside. Marlene felt cold all over. Klein ran a hand through his hair. We always suspected an insider was leaking intel, but no one ever found the source. Now we know why. They were hiding the transfers in private storage facilities, completely off the books. Athena suddenly jerked back from the table. Wait. The phantom echo is destabilizing. The device is trying to ping. Klein stiffened. How long before they trace it? Minutes, maybe less. Athena scrambled to shut down her equipment. We need to destroy the phantom's signature before it outputs. But as she worked, Marlene stared at the screen, where a final file still glowed. Transfer Alpha, authorized courier photo. Her heart caught. Open it, she whispered. Athena hesitated. It could trigger the open it, Marlene insisted, her voice raw. Athena clicked. The image filled the screen, a grainy still from surveillance. A man carrying the case, the same case from the storage unit. Marlene's breath broke. It was Jason, but younger, maybe from months ago, wearing work clothes, clearly unaware he was being recorded. He had been used, set up, turned into a courier for something he never understood. And now the same people who had used him were hunting him to cover their tracks. Athena shut everything down as the phantom echo fried itself in a harmless spark. They didn't get the beacon off, she said, relieved, but they'll know someone accessed the data soon. Klein grabbed the drive and slid it back into the tape wrapping. We need to move. Pier 27 is 2 hours away. We have to get there early and set up. Athena held Klein's arm. You're walking into a trap. I know. You'll be outnumbered. I know that too. Athena looked at Marlene, then at the drive, then back at Klein. Then you're going to need something more than a decoy. She ducked into another drawer and came out with a metallic capsule the size of a flashlight. What is that? Marlene asked. Insurance, Athena said. A burst EMP. Cripples electronics in a 20-foot radius. Buys you 60 seconds of chaos. Klein took it. I owe you. Athena shook her head. Just bring the kid back. Marlene stepped toward the door, grip tightening around the decoy drive. We will, she said, her voice steady, cold, unshakable, no matter what it takes. And as they climbed back into the cruiser and headed toward Pier 27, Marlene felt a new certainty settle inside her, a fierce, unstoppable resolve. They might have taken her son. They might have beaten him. They might think they hold all the power, but they had never faced a mother like her, and she was coming.
The short, fast-paced, fully linked continuation and full ending below is one single paragraph with no line breaks, picking up exactly from part 14 and wrapping the entire thriller tightly and satisfyingly.